Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is Joan Niesen, renowned writer, Sports Illustrated, who just followed Mo Langi in his mission in the Phoenix area. And if you're not aware of who Mo is, 6'7", 425-pound BYU football recruit who took signing day by storm about a year and 9 months ago. Joan, welcome to BYU Sports Nation.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
So what spawned this idea to do a story on big Motekiai Taukolo Langi?
Well, in the story, it talks about with the video that sort of went viral of him running the 40 back in, I want to say, late winter. It got out there on social media, and my former editor, who has since moved on from Sports Illustrated, but he watched that video and thought to himself, well, this would be just an amazing story. I independently had the same thought process, and we figured, we didn't really know the protocol for if I would be allowed to hang out with him on his mission or anything, but we figured, might as well look into it.
What? We know how big he is, like 6'7", 425, but describe to us how big he is.
So my perspective is probably a little skewed because I am tiny. I'm like 5'5", and I'm not a big person, and so I think everyone is bigger than they are. But he is, I would say, probably the largest human being I've ever been in a room with. It's interesting because you hear 425 pounds, and you kind of, I think your first inclination is to think obese or huge, and he's actually very, very solid. You probably wouldn't guess he weighed 425 pounds necessarily. At least in my mind, that's not what 425 pounds looks like. However, it's just, you're in a room and he makes the whole room seem out of scale. Like I sent you guys a photo of him sitting on a couch, and the couch looks too small for him. And he had to drive they had to give him and his mission companion an SUV because he doesn't fit in like the standard, fuel efficient cars that most of those guys who are on their mission have access to a car use. It's just everything is too small for him.
Joan Niesen of Sports Illustrated with us on BYU Sports Nation, talking about Mo Langi and the time she spent with him on his mission in Phoenix, Arizona. What did you learn about his persona and characteristics that he has as a personality?
Well, I think the biggest thing that kind of stands out about him is he's, you hear the term gentle giant, and I know that's kind of a cliche, but it's exactly what he is. He's pretty soft-spoken, very, he's very thoughtful. He's one of those guys, you ask him a question and he doesn't just immediately start, rattling off an answer. He'll sit there and think about it and really give you kind of a very, big picture kind of answer to a lot of things. And just, he's also very self-deprecating. I say this in the story. He doesn't really like talking about football very much because football is incredibly unfamiliar to him. But if you get him going about it, what he kept saying to me was, yeah, I think they just needed a really big water boy. They needed a really big water boy. And I said, do you think he'll be playing on the offensive line or the defensive line? And he was like, the sideline. I'll be on the sideline. And just very, he's good at kind of making fun of himself in a pleasant way.
A lot of national media don't know what goes into a mission. Both of Spencer and I went on a mission, and a lot of our audience knows. But it's always somewhat frustrating when certain opposing coaches say, "Oh yeah, it's an advantage." Well, yes, by age, but he doesn't, he doesn't just sit there and exercise all day. Can you describe maybe what you learned about an LDS mission as it relates to athletics?
Yeah, and I actually was very surprised when I was talking to some of the BYU coaches and people were saying, opposing coaches think it's an advantage. From my perspective, knowing, very little about it going into it, I would have assumed it was a disadvantage, the way that I think BYU people paint the picture. And so I was surprised that was kind of the overriding perspective from most people outside of BYU and outside of the LDS Church, because that's not the perspective that I had. I knew very little about it going in. In high school, a girl that I know dated a guy who went on a mission, and he went to BYU eventually. And so I kind of knew a little bit from that experience of hearing secondhand. But what was interesting to me was just, how scheduled these guys are and how, like you said, they're not working out all day. They're barely working out at all. They are, they got up at 5:30, Mo and his companion, just so they could get some extra workout time in. But waking up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning and working until, 10 at night. And it's just, I can see how exhausting it is and how you really have to give your whole life over to it. And, I went in thinking, how much do these guys think about football and blah, 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 blah. And I realized, there really isn't that much time to think about football at all.
Joan Niesen, Sports Illustrated staff writer with us on BYU Sports Nation. Follow her on the Twitter machine at Joan Niesen. Mo Langi is such a fascinating story because not many people have had the chance to meet him. They have only seen him.
You're the only media member to talk to him, by the way. No one. I don't think anyone else. We've never talked to him.
Yeah, I think I got the sense that he had not done any media yet at all.
Now, from what you could gather about his own personal expectations of what he is hoping for when he gets to BYU, excuse me, what is he hoping happens once he starts school and playing football at BYU?
You know, that's a great question, and I'm not sure he really knows what he hopes is going to happen. I asked him the same thing, and for him, I think at this point he looks at this as a way to get a good education, a new opportunity. I mean, he was very athletic in high school playing rugby and basketball, so I think he thinks that he has the physical skill set, but he's never even watched a football game on TV. So I don't think he has any conception of what he wants to get out of it other than a good education, and I think he would like to be successful. He's a kid who I think he had, close to a 4.0 grade point average in high school. He's a smart kid. I think he's the kind of person who, does everything he does well. And I think he'd like football to kind of fall into that category as well. And I assume, he has his cousin Harvey plays for BYU, and they would visit each other a lot when they were younger. I think less in recent years, but just that family having, a football connection and being a football family, I think he does have an idea that, this is just such a great opportunity, and this is not an opportunity that you should squander. And, if you get that scholarship offer, take it on the spot, which he did. I think he understands sort of what kind of doors this will open to him.
Joan, you're becoming a regular on the show.
We look forward to the next BYU story that you write. Taysom Hill-Frank, Mo Langi. What's next?
Nothing so far, but it was nice to it was funny how that worked out. We were brainstorming ideas, and it was like, I can, I'll do 2 trips for this story, but one trip I'll get some Mo and some, Taysom and Frank. So it was a fun couple weeks.
Hey, just for fun, Joan, should BYU be invited to the Big 12?
It's interesting. I mean, in terms of the list of schools, I feel like BYU is always on the list when these conversations happen. And I mean, having the reporting that I've seen the past few days with BYU and Houston kind of being the names that people seem to like the most within the Big 12. I mean, to me, those are the names on the list that I think the conference would benefit the most from. I'm actually working on a story right now about the formation of the Big 12 20 years ago. It's the 20th anniversary. And so this is all very fascinating for me to watch now, having just kind of dived into that world 20 years ago, and now it's, happening all over again. And BYU's name came up back in 1994, I think in the very preliminary stages of the Big 8 Southwest Conference merger. So It's interesting to see it there again.
Well, what do you know? You tell me the Big 12 wouldn't want Mo Langi in that conference? Come on.
If only. It's too bad he couldn't go against its name escaping me, the giant Baylor
the
offensive lineman who scored the touchdown.
Yeah.
His name is escaping me right now, but that would have been a fun matchup. A friend of mine, David Ubbin, who works for various places and covers college football, brought that up to me on Twitter yesterday when I tweeted the story, and I was like, oh, God, that is the downside of this realignment happening now.
Joan, we appreciate the time and look forward to your next line of work in Sports Illustrated. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, guys.